Hello and welcome to the OutSystems YouTube channel. My name is Logan Brade. I'm a developer advocate here at OutSystems. And today we're going to be talking about streaming video tech utilizing a few AWS-based technologies, including Interactive Video Service, IVS for short, S3, MediaConvert, and MediaTailor to create a streaming video app in OutSystems ODC using the HLS Player plugin from the Forge. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Logan, we already have a video component built directly into ODC. Can't I just drag that into my app and have a working streaming video solution? Well, look, I love the built-in video component in ODC, and I think it's fantastic for a lot of use cases, but it doesn't fit every single use case, especially when you start diving into more complex streaming applications. As live streaming and on-demand video has become more popular with the growth of platforms like Netflix, Disney+, Twitch, ESPN, the way that we deliver, consume, and monetize that content has had to change to keep up with that growth and be able to be flexible enough to be consumed on a wide variety of devices, screen sizes, resolutions, and bandwidths. The technology that gives us the power to do this is called HLS, and we're going to leverage that technology today to build a demo video streaming app that goes beyond just playing a video file and to push the boundaries of our app to rival major players in the space in an easy and quick way. So, what exactly is HLS? HLS is a video streaming protocol developed by Apple, and it stands for HTTP live streaming. It's one of the most widely used video streaming protocols, and while it does a lot of cool things, there's three kind of key things that are really going to supercharge our video streaming app and differentiate it from the existing video component in ODC. The first thing is versatility in content and devices. I can use HLS for live streamed or on-demand content using one single player on pretty much any device. The second thing is that it has adaptive bitrate. HLS can increase or decrease video quality depending on network conditions without interrupting playback. I don't need to wait for the whole video to load like standard video formats with HLS. And three, segmentation. HLS breaks up video files into segments that are stitched together and orchestrated by a single manifest file. We can manipulate the segmentation and stitching in the manifest file to do real-time ad insertion to monetize our content, which I will be showing as a bonus using a demo ad server from Google and MediaTailor. Now that that's out of the way, let's jump into it, and we'll start by setting up our application in ODC. So here we are in ODC, and I already have a project set up for this that I'm going to be using for most of the demo, but I do want to show you how easy it is to actually get the HLS Forge component into our project. So I'm just going to kind of walk through the process of creating an app and installing from the Forge and just kind of show it off. So first thing you're going to do is go to the Create tab in ODC, select your app. In this case, we'll just do a standard web app, even though my project's actually a phone app. I'm just going to call this HLS Test OS 1. And we're going to create our app. Here we go. And then this is our project. And all we're going to do is just go ahead and drag in a screen. I'm going to do an empty screen just to make this easy. And then in our search bar over here, we're going to look for HLS or something along those lines. But as you can see, we can't find what we're looking for, so we just need to import it. So we're going to search our public elements. And here is the HLS player. So we will click on that and add it to our project. Here we go. And then we're going to go ahead and go back to search once it's imported and look up HLS. And here's our HLS player. But now as you can see, our HLS player here is actually kind of large, and I wanted smaller for the project that I'm using. So I did something a little bit different in my actual project, and that was going to the HLS player itself and opening it up in its own separate project. And the reason why I did this is because since it's so large, I kind of want to change the default sizing. And this is the way to do that. So if I go into our drop down here and I go to height, you can see that our default value is 600. I'm just going to make it a nice 250. Then we're going to go ahead and click publish. And now it's going to bring up an error message, and it's going to say that it's a Forge asset, can't be published. Do you want to clone this library to continue editing? And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to change the name of it from clone of HLS player to clone of HLS player 3. I have a couple of these floating around, so I need something that's unique from the current clones that I've made. So we'll clone our library, and then we get a success message saying that it has been cloned. So we'll close out of this. And the next thing we need to do is just republish it again to push it into our actual project. Here we go. And then we're going to select the app that we want it in. And so our HLS Test OS1 app, try library. And now what we should be able to do is, yeah, there we go. There's our success message saying that it is imported. And I'm going to actually delete this out, go back to HLS, and here is the HLS player, and we'll drag it over. And there we go. Now it's actually resized in our application. So now we're actually going to go into the application that I'm using for the rest of this demo. So there's really not much different from what I just did with the Forge component and that new project. I just really wanted to show you how it was done. This just looks prettier. So essentially I added header content. I centered the player in a content container, and then also added a title and description. It's really not necessary. I just wanted to try to make it look a little bit better. But now that we have this set up, it's time to dive into the actual video portion in AWS. And there's two different ways of dealing with live streaming video. So there's actually live streaming content, and then there's on-demand content. So we're going to start by doing the live content or live streaming content, which will be using an AWS technology called IVS. So let's jump into AWS for that. Okay, so as you can see, we are in AWS's console. And so what we want to do is we want to go to the AWS Interactive Video Service, which is Amazon Interactive Video Service, so IVS. If it's not here on your recently visited, you could honestly just go to the search bar, type in IVS, and it'll pop up right at the top of services. So we will click on that. And then what we want to do is create a channel. And so we want to come up with a name. In this case, I'm going to do OutSystems demo video. And then we want to just use all of the default configuration and go ahead and create the channel. And it can take a few minutes for it to actually create. But what's interesting about IVS is that IVS is actually, my understanding is that is the white label version of Twitch. So it uses a lot of the underlying technology of Twitch into this platform, and it does it in a really easy way to get this set up. So now that our channel is created, what we need to do is we need to get the URL from this endpoint into our application. And then we also need to start broadcasting a live feed in order to be put into our application. So let me go ahead and find our playback URL. Here we go. This is our playback URL. And an important note, when you're looking at this, the important thing to look at is the end of this URL, .m3u8. That is what is the actual manifest file, and that's what kind of signifies that it is HLS. So we're going to go ahead and click copy on that, and we're going to go back to ODC Studio. And as you can see, we click on our video. There's two options here, two things that we can overwrite. There's the height, and then there's the video URL. In this case, we're going to overwrite the video URL, and we're going to do it through the expression editor. And I will bring this over to my main screen. We just put it in quotes, and we paste it in. We'll go ahead and close that. And now you might be wondering, okay, we pasted the URL, but there's really nothing happening. Now we need to actually start getting our video broadcasted, and this can be done through a multitude of different tools. OBS would probably be the most popular, but I'm going to try to do something a little bit different. So give me 1 minute and I will be back. Okay, welcome back. So as you can see over here, I've actually set up my cell phone. It's running Streamlabs OBS, and what I've done is I've actually configured it to send the data from Streamlabs to our IVS channel. So the way that I accomplished that was basically by taking the ingest server RTMP endpoint and the stream key, plugging that into Streamlabs, and then hitting go live. And as you can see, we have an actual live feed of what is happening behind me in our platform. And now we're going to go ahead and publish our application. Okay, now that's complete. Let's open this up in the browser to see if it is working. There it is. Now we can see our live feed actually going into our OutSystems ODC app. But with this being said, this was pretty easy to set up, only took a few minutes really to do it. We now need to start diving into the other side of it, and that's going to be on-demand video. And that's also going to take a couple more different technologies in order for it to work if we're not in a live streaming situation. So let's jump into S3 and start working with our actual video files. Here we are back at the console in AWS, and now we want to go ahead and go into S3. So as you can see here, I have it under recently visited. If it's not showing up, you can just easily search it in the services search bar. click on that. And as you can see, I have all of my buckets here. And there's two things that we need to create in S3 for this to work. We need an actual input bucket, and then we need an output bucket. And the reason for that is that we need to take our video that we've created, our on-demand video that we want to share out to the world, and we need to actually convert the file into HLS so it can be consumed as an HLS endpoint. And we're going to do all of the configuration for that in MediaConvert and in S3. So let's start by creating our input bucket. We'll just do a general purpose bucket, and we'll do OutSystems video input. And we're going to just keep all of the default settings for this one. There it is. And now we need to create an output bucket. And I'm actually going to use essentially the same naming convention for this. And with this bucket, we're going to have to do some changes to it, and I will walk through what those are in order to work. But the first main one is that in our output bucket, this is essentially content that's going to be consumed by anybody out in the world. So we have to actually turn off the default like access settings and make it publicly available for everybody to consume. Now, there are a lot of hazards with this. So if you're doing this in a production setting, you really want to make sure that you're tightening down the security of your buckets. But in this case, it's going to be public. I want it to be public. I want people to consume it. So we're going to go ahead and make this available. So we will create the bucket. Oh, forgot to change the name. And this one will be output. There we go. Oh, have to acknowledge. And so now we have our output bucket. But let's go ahead and change our permissions for this. So we're going to go into the permissions. And the first thing that we need to change is actually the bucket policy. And what this bucket policy will do is it'll essentially sets kind of the boundaries of who can access what within the bucket. And I have a JSON doc that I can actually just copy and paste into here, and I can kind of walk through it a little bit. Oh, here we go. And then as you can see here, version, that's just the version of the JSON or the bucket policy that we're using. And of course, there's the statement. It says like essentially what we're doing. So we're adding permissions, affecting, allowing everything in the bucket to be able to be like retrieved from the bucket. We do need to change the resource. And so I'm just going to copy the bucket ARN from up here, go to resource and paste this in. And then of course we need the /star. And what that indicates is it's going to be on every resource inside of the bucket. And then we are going to save those changes, and we should get, there we go, successfully edited bucket policy. So it did understand it, didn't come back with any errors, which is awesome. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to change is the cross-origin resource sharing tab. And so what will happen is if you don't set this up and you try to actually play your videos in your application, you're going to get a CORS error. So we need to bypass the CORS error from S3 in order for this to work. And I also copied this down because this is, honestly, there's a lot of documentation on how this works. So I don't necessarily want to go through all of it or an explanation of it. You can easily look it up. And honestly, a lot of people use the documentation for this. So here we have allowed headers, which is authorization, our allowed methods, which is the main one we care about is get. And then allowed origins is star, which basically allows anybody from anywhere to access it. And of course, if that's not your use case, you want to make sure that you are locking this down appropriately. And then exposing headers, access control, allow origin. And we're going to save those changes. And what that will do is, like I said previously, it will stop you from getting CORS errors in your application. And so we should be good now to actually start taking our video files, getting them into AWS, and then doing the conversion. So let me go back to our buckets, and I'm going to go to our OutSystems video input, and I'm going to upload a file. Now this can take some time. So, make sure you give yourself enough time to do it because it could take upwards of like an hour or two, depending on the size and of the file and the actual resolution of the content that you're uploading. Okay, so the video that I've chosen for this is actually my Botango video with OutSystems. If you want to check that out, you can see it right here. But we're going to try to make this available for our on-demand streaming platform that we're creating. But as you can see, the estimated remaining time is about 30 minutes for this upload. It's about 12 gigs, 12.79 gigs, so it does take a while. It is faster if you use the S3 or AWS CLI to do it that way versus then the actual browser because it's throttled. But I'm going to go ahead and take a break, and I will be back in 30 minutes and we will pick it up from there. And after about 30 minutes, our upload is complete. So our video is in the input bucket. And now what we need to do is we need to jump into MediaConvert to convert the file and then output it into our output bucket. So we're going to go up to the search bar here and type in MediaConvert. There it is. Click on that, and it's going to give you all the information about MediaConvert, but read through it if you have any interest in any of the other file types it can convert your videos to. But we're going to go ahead and dive into just creating a job. And so this looks a little bit confusing, but I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible and not dive too deep into it. But we have to select our input file. So in this case, we're going to browse. We're going to go to our input bucket, and then we're going to select our video. So in this case, the OS Botango 4K video. We're going to choose that. And then we're going to go to our output groups here, and we're going to add an output group. And we're going to select Apple HLS. Click on that and do select. And then we need to change our destination. So in this case, this is going to be our output bucket. So we're going to click the drop down, go to OutSystems Video Output, click on that. And we don't have any other folders or anything like that, so we could just leave it as is. We'll choose that. And then we're going to go to on the side part where it says H.264 AAC. We're going to click on that. And the big things that we need to change are the max bitrate. So in this case, I use what's in the example. This can actually kind of get pretty complicated, and I'm probably not the best one to explain how to do this, but I'm just going to use the default max bitrate. And then what we need to do is change the name modifier. So in this case, I'm just going to add HLS as the name modifier, and we will click create. And now what this has done is it's now working through, and it's going to convert our file. So the file that I put into the bucket was the .mov file, which is something that I got from Final Cut Pro when I created the video. And it's now going to take it from that .mov file and put it into a .m3u8, which is our HLS format. And it's going to break up that video into multiple different files. So this job, just because the size of the video, can actually take a really long time. There's a way to accelerate it where you get priority in the queue for doing the media transcoding. It costs more money to do that. So if you're kind of like short on time, it makes sense to do it. But in this case, I'm not. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run through, and I will be back later to talk about the next steps of the project. And actually, while this is going through the conversion process, I kind of wanted to go through some of these different settings and talk about them a little bit within MediaConvert, because MediaConvert as a service is actually super powerful in all of the things that it can do. So if we go into the details of our job, right, like you can do things like video correction, you can do input filtering. Yeah, so you can actually do things with like the frame rate, aspect ratio, different codecs and scaling. And one of the interesting parts is I can't get back to it without creating a whole other job, so I won't go into it. But you can actually stitch in different graphics into your video using MediaConvert on the fly. So if you want to watermark your videos, you could totally watermark your videos. And so it's a really powerful tool, and it's really easy to use. There's just a lot of options. And so trying to figure out the options for what you're trying to do can be a little bit complex. But if you have like any conversion needs with your videos, this is actually a really cool and easy way to do it once you kind of understand the baseline of it. Okay, so I did have to step away for a little bit, but as you can see, our MediaConvert job is complete. I started around like 5:50. It was done at about 6:06, and it looks like everything worked out well. So let's go ahead and test out our video. And the way that we test it out is we go back to S3, and then we go into our output bucket. Let's see if it's in here. Yes. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting. As you can see, like we have tons of files in here. The main thing that we want to look at is this .m3u8. That is our manifest file. And essentially what this does is it goes through and it identifies all of the segments of our video. So all of these extra files in here are all of the segments of our, in this case, I think it's like a 30-minute video. So what we really want to do is we just want to go to this .m3u8, click on it, and we want to get our object URL. So as you can see, here's our object URL. So we will click copy. And now we need to test it. So I'm going to actually drop it into our application here. So we'll go ahead and I will, here we go to our expression editor. Go ahead, paste that in there. And we'll close it. And now let's go ahead and publish. All right, that is published. Now let's open it up in the browser. There we go. And there's our Better Together video, robotics with Bottango and OutSystems, and it is playing. And as you can see, it's actually pretty seamless. It's not doing, it's not taking the whole video to load. It's essentially just like playing those segments as the manifest is telling it to. So it's a pretty smooth video process. With that complete, the next thing we want to do is actually take advantage of the manifest file and the segments that were created by the MediaConvert job. So in this Bottango video, we want to be able to monetize it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of the segmentation and actually do server-side ad insertion and insert ad tags into the content so that it plays ads at the beginning, middle, and end of our videos. So let's go ahead and go to MediaTailor and start working with that. So as you can see, we're at the console homepage for AWS and we need to go to MediaTailor. So we'll click on MediaTailor, or if it's not recently added, go ahead and search it and it should be there. And then we're going to create a configuration. So the first thing we need to add in MediaTailor is our actual ad campaign name. And I'm just going to call it OS ad campaign. And the next thing we need to add is our content source. Now, I do kind of want to talk about this a little bit. So I tried running this earlier and I was running into a strange issue, and I think it actually had to do with the naming of my file type for the Bottango video. So I went through and actually uploaded a new video because, or not a new video, but it's the same video with a different name just because the file size, AWS and S3 didn't like it when I tried to change the name in S3. So I went ahead and re-uploaded it and reconverted it with all the same details, but just changed the name to this OS Bottango, and it came out with osbottango.m3u8. So for this, we're going to actually change our content, our content source from what has been previously created. And so I copied the URL and I pasted it in here, but we want to remove this osbottango.m3u8 and the slash at the end. And the reason for that is that we just want to add the bucket that it's sitting in, because it's not actually in a folder in S3. It's just like the main bucket. So we don't actually need to reference the actual file name of that because it's going to apply to the entire bucket. The next thing we need to add is our ad decision server. So I do have a test server here. And I will paste this in. And this test server is actually from Google Ad Manager. So they have a few test servers that you can test out for like your pre-rolls, your mid-rolls, your end roll credits. This particular ad decision server and the data that I'm passing to it is basically telling MediaTailor to stitch in a pre-roll, a mid-roll, and an end roll to our video. And to kind of talk about what MediaTailor is doing here is that it's going to create a URL for us. And instead of using the URL that's in our S3 bucket, we're going to hit what MediaTailor has created. And what it's going to do is it's going to orchestrate the communication between our video file and the ad decision server. And then it's also going to handle the orchestration of when it gets stitched into our actual content. And I know it sounds really complicated and kind of the back end of it really kind of is complicated, but for us, MediaTailor makes us super easy. We just need to care about the endpoint, the URL that's actually created. There are a couple of options in here, and one thing that I do want to kind of talk about before I create this URL is CDNs. So this works a lot better if you're doing it through CDN. AWS's CDN is actually called CloudFront. It's kind of complicated setup, and it's kind of outside the boundaries of what I'm trying to show off with this demo. But just know that like if you're doing this for large scale applications, definitely look into using CloudFront to do your video delivery and your ad stitching and all that jazz. Is kind of the like main content delivery portion of this, hence content delivery network. But it's usually, for this use case, it's not really necessary to create a CDN. I don't have any issues with latency or anything like that. I don't need all of this on the edge because it's expensive to do that. So unless you're actually making money from it, or it's like part of an actual like commercial product, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do that. So I'm going to skip that, and we're just going to create our configuration. And as you can see, it says configuration created successfully. So the main thing that we want to look at is this HLS playback prefix. So I'm going to click copy for this, and then we are going to go back to our ODC Studio, and we are actually going to paste this into our HLS video URL value. And I am going to make some changes here because I did do a change. So the way that this is different from what was from MediaTailor is that in this case, we now have the actual file name at the end of it, because we do want to go to MediaTailor knows it needs to go out to that bucket, but it doesn't know what file it needs to select when it starts doing all the ad stitching and everything like that. So we have to tell it like through a path parameter exactly what file we want to hit. And so in this case, we add os.tango.m3u8 because that's the name of our file in S3. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And then we are going to publish this. Let me log back in because it's been a little bit. There we go. So log back in, and now it is publishing. Okay, publishing is complete. Let's open it up in the browser and see what we get. Now, I will say when working with MediaTailor, because of the way, I don't know what it does on the back end, but it can take a couple of minutes for it to actually show up. So this might be too soon to actually jump in and have the ad start playing, but we'll test it out. And if it doesn't, you know, we'll try to figure it out and see what's going on. But it sometimes just takes a few minutes. Don't worry if you don't see your ads showing up right away. And then sometimes if it's having connection issues, it'll just skip playing the ad altogether. So don't worry too much about that. There we go. So now, as you can see, we actually now have a pre-roll in our video. And what's really cool about this is because it's server-side ad insertion, it's basically going to be seamless to our end users. Goes through the pre-roll, goes right into our video. Let's see if I can actually get the end roll to play. There we go, post-roll. And then we have our post-roll there. So somewhere in the middle of the video, I don't want to figure out what the middle of the video is, but there's also a mid-roll that plays halfway through our video. And what's really cool about this is you can actually, in your videos, if you have like ad breaks that you create in your content, you can actually tell MediaTailor to create stitching at the exact point you're supposed to have your ad breaks. So it's a natural breakup of content, but you can also dynamically change what ads get played on your ad decision server. So you don't have to keep things static. You can constantly change it. You can work with other partners, other advertisers to put new content and new advertisements in your videos. Now, one of the things I do want to talk about with Google Ad Manager is like, this is just a test, right? Like you want to be able to actually monetize your content. Ad decision servers can be really complex and they can be very expensive. There could be rules about using them, and even getting onto certain platforms, there's a lot of rules around it. So I do have a video where I talk about creating essentially what is a basic ad decision server using all serverless tech. I'll be sure to link to the video so you can watch that if you want to try to do it yourself and mess around with BAST ad tags. It's pretty nifty. It's interesting. And it'll help you create more dynamic content on your own video platforms. Otherwise, I definitely suggest like checking out other ad decision servers that are out in the market. I know that there's some open source ones. I've personally never used them. I've just kind of created my own, but definitely something to look into. But with that being said, we have our project here, and I was able to show you how to integrate live streaming videos into your ODC applications, work with on-demand content in your ODC applications, and how to even take it further in getting ads playing on your on-demand content in your ODC application. So hopefully this was helpful, but if you like what you see, please be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.